Hi, everybody. Jay, thank you so much for that like Buddha bar style. I might as well have been at a lounge in Miami or something vibe. I really enjoyed it. I am very excited to be welcoming so many people on the Land of End Twitch today. We are starting what will be lifelong, or at least for the folks that are already joining, it's what we lay in bed thinking about at night, but a lifelong dialogue on what it could look like to reshape and re-architect the world and our relationship to each other and our relationship to the planet and our relationship to systems. And I am joined today by a very diverse group of folks and perspectives and lived experiences for the sole objective of making sure that we are trying to not just build something, but build something in the value set that I think we are all so eager to make sure we protect and see more of. And so I am joined today in my I should say partner in crime, but like Saji, given what it is that we're trying to do, we should definitely not be partners in crime on this. But my chief accomplice on organizing these conversations on Twitch, Saji Prelis, who is, I call him a global dialogue architect, but he is so much more than that. He is he I would say he provides air cover for so many of the youth movements worldwide, having been somebody who was born and raised in, I should say, raised for a period of his life in conflict in Sri Lanka. He certainly understands the power of young voices. And he's talking to us from a hotel room somewhere fun, I hope, New York City, right, Saji? You're where all the other diplomats are today.
In New York City. Yes, Jenna, great to be here with you and fantastic to have this conversation on the sidelines of the world leaders having this conversation in closed doors. We're having this in a public setting. It's really good to have this refreshing way of thinking about our next generation of democracy and more freedoms.
Yeah, we're certainly one of, as you look back at some of the most important moments that have dictated recent history, because oftentimes we think history is like what happened in the past 1,000 years, in the past 3,000 years. There was 100 million indigenous people living in the United States for 100, many tens of thousands of years before any of Europeans arrived. So I want to make sure that we qualify that. But if we look at recent history, all of the major decisions, whether it was Bretton Woods related to the World Bank and IMF, or the League of Nations, which was 12 diplomats, to Treaty of Versailles, even Davos World Economic Forum. Currently, it's very closed door, which makes it convenient for people who are protecting their interests, which we can all hold space for. But we are very intentionally doing this in a very public space, and plan to continue to do it here. We are blessed to have Yaya, who is an Afghan youth activist and is now based in my favorite city in the world, New York City. And we have Mina, who is a U.S. youth peace and security activist. She is also spearheading the campaign for a phenomenal congressional candidate outside of Washington, D.C., Abigail. Mina, what did you say Abby's last name was?
Abigail Spanberger. She's running for governor, and she's a current
She's running for governor. Sorry, I apologize for that. We need more women. We need more governor. I just actually think the world should be run by governors. Because I think mayors, governors, principals, nurses, teachers, like they just understand the infrastructure and the systems that keep things moving. I definitely don't fall into that category. While I was a first grade teacher, I do a lot of talking and not so much acting, but governors are the people that really get their hands dirty. So we're grateful to you and your work, and it sounds like she's doing really great. And then Arif, who is the African Union Youth Ambassador for Peace, originally from Algeria, but really, from what I understood, Arif straddles the AU, the EU, all of those organizations that love their acronyms. And Arif is having some camera technical issues, but we can all power through because we care mostly about the content and the voice and the ideas. So thank you all so much for being here. This is one of many, many conversations. We have a series of additional conversations on these similar topics this week, because as Saji pointed out, that while we all love to watch diplomacy unfold, it is highly performative. During weeks like this at the General Assembly in the United Nations, where world leaders come together to, in some cases, hear themselves talk, but probably not make the space for all the voices that need to be heard. So thank you all for being here. Saji, any other remarks before I jump in with the hardest question of our time?
I think, if I may, Jenna, first of all, I want to thank you for bringing these groups of talented, brilliant young women and young men to this platform and enabling them to creating a place for them to hear, for us to hear their voices. But I think the main thing is, you know, when the leaders are meeting, they're talking about we the people, but there's often, as you said, we are performative, but we the people are also gathering in these conversations more publicly. So I think this is a really important platform, and I really appreciate all those who are joining us to listen and engage in this conversation, because I think the wisdom comes from this dialogue that we're having. So I really value this, and Jenna, thank you for your leadership in making this space happen for young people around the world.
Yes, I appreciate that, Saji. I do want to emphasize that this is being broadcast across Twitch, YouTube, Substack, Instagram, all the interwebs for the sake of, I would say, opening the doors and more transparency. So, Yaya, Mina, Arif, Saji, and I spent a lot of time talking to each other about some of our ideas, but I am most interested in hearing from you all on what some out of the box ideas you might have related to reforming systems that you think might not have been tried yet. And you can go into any direction that you want. Would love to hear from your lived experience, but Mina, as the first, as the only woman on in the guest side of the line on this conversation, would love to hear from you first. But what are some, particularly as you're trying to build out a governing a governor campaign, and as someone's from Afghanistan, what ideas might you have?
Yeah, thank you, Jenna. It's awesome to be here. Really appreciate the invite, and it's so awesome to reconnect with old friends like Yahya and Saji, and you yourself. I think, we live in such a weird time in history, right? Like, we went through a crazy global pandemic. We saw systems crumble. We're watching a genocide unfold before our eyes on our phones, and we can basically do anything about it. I mean, here in the US, right? Like, I was raised right outside of Washington, D.C., and seeing everything happen, seeing military tanks roll in right in my own backyard. It just, and then also working on a campaign, getting involved in local politics, seeing all of this disrupt right before me in the span of what, like 6 7 years is insane. But I think, and also for background, I was just at USAID. I had just started my job there 10 months in when USAID also erupted in front of my eyes. So I've literally seen all of this chaos unfold before me. And now getting involved in local politics and seeing how much is happening at a local level to change things, I think we sometimes forget about how much power there lies in changing the systems right in front of us. I went into the global development world based on my own interests, as my family's from Afghanistan. And so seeing the conflict there, I was so inspired to go do international development. Um, but with everything happening in my own backyard, you just really start to see how much power you have to change your own neighborhood, right? Mother Teresa always said, peace begins with a smile. And I think we need to live by that. Because when we start helping our neighbors get food on their table, and when we start helping um, people who pray differently or speak differently or love differently that live right next to us, that's when we start changing systems. Because at the end of the day, systems are made up of people, of us, of humans. And when USAID was dismantled, something that a rally cry for the humanitarian community was, the humanitarian spirit lives within us, not within systems. So it's really on us to reimagine that and revitalize that humanitarian spirit that we all have within us. And something as little as local politics that may not affect what's happening abroad and may not affect what's happening in our home countries as immigrants, that is part of changing the system. And the thing is, my work on the campaign is doing Asian American voter outreach, and a lot of people forget or don't understand that Asian Americans make up the third largest voting bloc. And there have been so many elections happening locally where 5,000 votes, 500 votes, 10 votes have made the biggest difference between having a real leader in office who speaks for the people and acts on behalf of the people and someone who's bought by powers and bought by money. And so I think, long story short, in my long-winded way of seeing, the way that we reimagine systems is stop thinking big and start thinking small, because it's the small actions that make the big difference at the end of the
Very
day.
well said. I appreciate that, Mina. And I feel like we could probably talk just about that for hours and hours and hours. But Arif, thank you so much for powering through this without a camera on. But somebody who spends a lot of time working with the AU and the EU, I'm curious if you could hack one global institution that could potentially help support folks at a more local level, um, you know, being knee deep in that global institutionalized world. I'd argue that we've inherited a lot of those constructs, some that need to just quickly come crumbling down, and some that we could continue to build off of. What are your thoughts on the role of those big organizations as we try to get more local, as Mina said?
Excellent, Gina. Thank you a lot for having me today. Am I audible? Once again, sorry for the technical issues.
It's fine. It's very
Excellent.
clear. We
Thank
can
you.
hear you perfectly.
Awesome. So I'm literally doing my best so that I can have a stable internet access. So speaking about to revert on what Mina was actually speaking about, and I really salute you for your political engagement. I'm still youth, but it reminds me of my very fresh youth age, like when we were into politics and trying to get or to close the gap of trust between the citizens and the officials. So, yeah, actually, our title as the African Youth Ambassador for Peace, we are actually trying not only to hack, but to bring new practices within the African Union itself, as the African Union Youth for Peace program do have this kind of, let's say, curricula where the youth they are actually have a voice, and our voice actually is very institutional. So it's actually we deal with member states, with the reps, with different delegations. But still, we have noticed that unfortunately, there is a sort of when it comes to multilateralism, you find that the youth are the missing cycle. Like in the very first study on the missing piece, the missing piece that was authored by Grams. So the youth are still, even though we have the UN Security Council 2250 resolution and so many empowering the youth, but still we find that the youth are still not being taken very seriously. So unfortunately I say it's a lot. I'm not into too much of speaking, I'm into practices and giving more of actions. So we have tried within our team to bring new practices such as having be mindfully coordination meet our team, or even with the rex and the rams in Africa. We do have at the African Union, we do have these kind of regional economic communities and the regional mechanism. So we are trying to build on that, not only going from top to bottom approach, but also from bottom to up, so that we incentivize the officials, the diplomats, to hear what the youth they are saying. And especially when you are speaking about the foreign affairs policy of a state or a region, it's a very dangerous place to be, because we need to be very cautious and our words need to be very well chosen. It's not matter of being politically correct, but sometimes some words do have some societal sensitivity. So even for us as youth experts within our regions, we try to identify such kind of terms so that we know the level of sensitivity. So that when we approach certain ministers, head of states, prime ministers, or something, we know how to interact with them, and we try to open doors for more youth empowerment. But speaking about if we want to shift uh, the system of multilateralism. It's true that based on the all the treaties that you have mentioned, the Versailles, uh, Bretton Woods, and so on. Now, I think that the word is, since we are being governed by our elders, they think that we are going back to the history cycle, which means that they think we are into the classical notion of. So to them it's now, yes, it's true that it's well, the very first basic notions that were incorporated into international affairs, it's about state to state. But then the paradigm shifted, and we started having international organizations such as the UN, AU, EU, and others. And now we are focusing also on the impact of individuals within the international affairs sphere. Still, I do believe that we need to have this kind of decentralization of governance. Why? Because the current multilateral system is not taking into consideration context specificities. For instance, you have these kind of uh, democracy principles that are suited for the Westerns and not suited for other regions. And I leave the floor open to you. Back to you, Dina.
I feel like you were it was just like a little bit
I
of
was audible.
No, you were perfect. The audio is actually spectacular. And the ideas are big, but I'm not actually going to let you disappear without pushing you a little bit further on what you mean by decentralization. But before we get to some of that, and I see Mina smirking because and Saji's head is going to fall off because he's agreeing at such a level. But Yaya, you have been part of two worlds. um One world I know intimately, and one world I only know from stories, and I know from headlines, and I know from foreign policy strategies, uh but how has being part of two worlds changed your understanding of what, and I am going to use, speaking of language, Arif, I'm going to use this word very intentionally. How has being part of two worlds changed your understanding of what freedom means? And I'm interested to know what systems in each place, both Afghanistan and NYU, or the states in general, do you think are getting in our way of collective and individual freedom? He had all the answers, and then he froze. He'll come back on. Jay is gonna troubleshoot, I'm sure. Um, yeah, you there? Oh, no. Maybe, while he figures that out, Arif, um, one thing that you mentioned, and God, I don't wanna bring this back to American politics, even though I know that Mina and I are both so steeped in it. Let's see actually if we can bring him in real quick. Hi.
I am really sorry.
It's
My
it's not a
laptop
problem.
went out of
It's because
charge.
you were about to deliver all the answers that the World Wide Web got so overwhelmed. Did you hear the question?
That's correct. I heard the question. Thank you, Jenna. Well, that's correct. For many years when I was in Afghanistan, when I was working as a youth leader for my community, what was needed, and what people really desired for. I think it's not only in Afghanistan; it's around different parts of the world. That all we want is to have. When we are born, to go a little bit back, when we are born, we have certain rights. Like this world, when we come here, the world is not being sold for us. We have a right to live here. We have this resources available, and similar to that, we are part of this world, the communities we build. It's to just use them in the best way possible. In Afghanistan, we have many issues going on, and for the many years I have been working, I have a pattern. It was a bigger thing. The United States, the country with values, with high values for human rights, for development, for peace, for equality. That was our biggest motivation. But the second world, as you said, I have been living here in the United States, seeing them going away, it's kind of heartbreaking, and it's also alarming to us. What would be and what is needed? What would be our pattern, not only in it for Afghan youth, but for people like me around the.
That's okay. You know what, Saji, maybe what we'll do is we'll yeah, after the conversation tomorrow, we can do some more one-on-one time if his tech is not going to be able to keep up. Arif, while Yaya's giving it one more go, I do have a question for you, and then I'm going to try to bring it back to Mina in an unfair question, I think. But you know, if you could reimagine a completely new regional system for peace and security in the MENA region, North Africa, Middle East, that helped protect everybody's different ideas of democracy or however they wanted their systems to be, what would that look like? Like what would the actual structure of that potentially be?
First thing first, I would take into consideration the existing social cohesion, because you cannot run a system without the people. If you don't have those who are interested in that thing, for instance, there are some tribes in the ancient time, they used to have this kind of collaboration between them, right? But those that used to live within a particular tribe who opposed certain practices to the chief of against the chief of tribe, or the council of the tribe as they name it in the North Africa. So what they do, they expel them, but still they have access to resources so that they can survive. And out of the collaboration and cooperation between the two tribes that exist in that particular area, economic ties flourishes, more opportunities keeps coming, and those who were expelled, sorry, from that particular tribe, they are going to notice the difference, that yes, still we were opposing, but still we could have lived in sort of how I'm going to formulate it, uh, in a cohesion, because I do believe that we neglected the social cohesion map, and we started drawing some lines where, for instance, in North Africa, when you speak about the Sahel or the Grand Maghreb, or even the relation between the states surrounding the Mediterranean basin, it's like something that we have, like now, when we go to Spain, we feel very bounded, very connected to the Spanish citizens. Even if you go to Greece or France, or even to into our neighboring countries, for instance Tunisia, or even you go to other Sahel countries. So I do believe that if it was up to me, I would take into consideration the very first criteria is the social cohesion. Because yes, go ahead. Sorry, Gina.
Well, no, 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 please finish your because I just have a clarifying question.
Sure. So with by taking into consideration the social cohesion, we will be building up on what is existing, and we will be normalizing the traditional practices so that it can have sort of a legal framework. And by the way, in Algeria and in some North African countries, they actually use such kind of practices. So there is the decentralization, and there is the in French we call it le système déconcentré. I will try to look for the appropriate term for this. So, for instance, you can govern at the local level, but still you do have some institutions that are linked to the capital, and by this you keep the balance. You keep when it comes to taxes, or even let's say pumping the construction a budget or something like that. So still we do have such kind of systems that existed before, but have we took that into consideration? Back to you, Gina.
And Mina and Saji, please, if you have questions or like, I'm the one with the least amount of ideas here, so we're clear. Um, Arif, a question for you though. I actually have a bunch of different questions, and Mina, I would love to hear your thoughts about this too, because as you said, you know, watching the world unfold on our phones and feeling both helpless, and then maybe we are actually helpless, but maybe we aren't, and the role that borders keep us in, or the role that our governments make decisions on our behalf that we have no control over, and being an activist, someone who's been organizing in the streets, I sort of am like, well, that's not working anymore right now. You know, just like it feels like I'm coming up against nothing but brick walls. But a reef, sort of going back to this idea of like local governance, my imperialized thinking, schooling has me then ask the following question, that if I'm where does my house fall? Where do I then fall in these different governance systems? And when we say different governance systems, is it like, well, kids have to start going to school at 4 versus 6? Or is it, you know, from like, you know, how we handle crime and punishment? Like, tell me a little bit about what your idea would look like if we went back to some of those traditional practices, because it intimidates me a little bit.
Sure. So I have actually the very good answer to this, and as I said, I speak out of experience. So, for instance, when I have traveled to the Sahara, I found out that you do have this kind of what we call the regular education system. Okay, so you have the kids; they go to to school. So, for instance, here in Algeria, from 8 to 4:30, right? They have the everyone do have the same curricular studies, whether for primary, undergrad, etc., etc. But what I have found out that in the Sahara, it's actually they start way early. Their study day starts not at 7, but at 5:30 or 6. So they have developed what we call the complementary education system. So the gaps that they have identified in the official education system is actually complemented, but what they are taught elsewhere, and these elsewhere it's kind of traditional education institutes managed by the local community. So it's either takes the legal form of an association or civil society or something like that. So it falls on their responsibility to close that gaps. For instance, in some places, they actually don't start learning about coding at the very age. What's for sure, in the education system, they don't learn coding during the primary education phase. Whereas when you go to such kind of communities, you will find out that in the complementary education system, they are actually taught how to use laptop, how to start coding, how to use even JavaScripts, and so on, which is something great. And those who are actually do have sort of more of an interest in something practical. For instance, they go and receive some induction in how to use solar system. Others, if they are interested in agriculture, others even if they want to go into more of let's say getting the basis of how the industries works, you see. So these kind of complementary, and again, this is out of the social cohesion because the society actually trusts what existed. And you cannot find this in the this is, I'm not saying it's urban or rural, but if you go nearby to the sea, you will find more or less such kind of practices. Because in the, for instance, in the mega cities, most of them, they are actually, they once they finish their schools, they go back to either they go to the to practice a sport or just go back to their houses. Whereas for kids, they actually inside, I found that in the Sahara region, they actually receive a lot of intellectual knowledge.
Mina, do you think that could potentially translate in the United States?
It's a funny question. No. And the reason I say no is because in the United States, you're seeing a really big blow up of mistrust in our systems, in our traditional systems, right? And the United States is interesting because the systems in education, for example, was built to condition society to think and act and behave in a certain way. We didn't learn about taxes or finances or how to take care of ourselves growing up. We learned how to think exactly how the system wanted us to think. And we learned a history that was written by the people who wanted us to have a certain understanding of history. And so now I think on all sides of the political spectrum in the US, there's a really deep mistrust in the direction of our education system. And I think when you bring AI and technology into play, it's almost impossible to think about going back to an educational system that doesn't include innovation around these technologies. In every school district around the country, you have laptops replacing textbooks. There's no world in which we can ever go back to those traditional systems simply because of that. Um, and there's I think an awakening within the United States that our systems are just not working, right? Like from local levels to national levels, it's not working at all. And I think there's very deep, I don't, how do I say this politically correct? There's very deep infrastructure issues. For example,
Mina, I just want to pause you for 1 second. You
Yeah.
don't have to be politically correct here. It's entirely up to your level of comfort, but
Mhm.
like we are only interested in flipping the tables.
Okay. All right.
So navigate however you want to.
Okay, I appreciate that, Jenna. Okay, so I'm gonna flip the table right now. Citizens United, for example, was a case passed back in 2010, if I'm not mistaken, which essentially changed the way politics works in America. it allowed companies to act as individual voters in elections and donate to campaigns. That opened the door for money to start shaping politics. And I think in the US specifically, and this can be true for the rest of the world too, but everything is political. And education, for example, is one of those things that's political. And a lot of politicians, I'm not going to blame left or right because it happens on all sides, started remapping the districts to shape educational systems. So people, based on their zip code, get access to a certain level of education that people from other zip codes don't. And a lot of that has to do based on your immigration status, this color of your skin, the way that you pray. Um, and so I think when we think about going back to traditional systems, it's almost impossible because when the system starts playing you, you have to start playing it. And so, going back to what I said earlier about local action matters, when we get the right people elected to the school board and the school board starts fighting against the powers that want to take away educational equity from different communities, that's when we start shaping the system and changing the system. And so, kind of to what Arif was saying too, it has to be grassroots and top down as well, right? So we can make the change on a local level to start changing the system to fit our needs better. We also have to start changing things at a national level. So Citizens United, for example, we need to overturn that and make sure we get money out of politics so that we can give power back to the people and we can allow communities make the decisions better for themselves. And I think, the foundation of the United States was based on this idea that states and local communities have the power to make decisions for themselves. And we've lost that. We've lost it in
Completely.
the sauce of money taking over. So I think, long story short, it has to be both top down, bottom up, but really hard to say that we can go back to traditional systems in the US.
Yeah. Well, there's also, I mean, here in the United States, we don't have a relationship with any traditional systems. Everything that I mean, you even saw it in the way that I asked the question. Like, I felt like I had to play the system and saying, well, wait a second, where does governance fall? Who gets to control me and my kids, my asset, my time, my resources? That there's no sense of like, I spend a lot of time with the indigenous here in the United States, but even it's like recent indigenous, we're not talking about like really like the communities that have been here for thousands and thousands of years. I keep having to tell myself, Mina, Saji, and Arif, and this makes me, as you say, what's my being politically correct? I have to say out loud, I don't want to sound like I'm crazy, but I'm gonna say the thing. I have to keep reminding myself that that we have memory, we have ancient memory, and we just have to find ways to surface it. And there's people who are conduits who can unlock the thing. Um, there's this canyon in New Mexico area. I'm really, really drawn to the southwest of the country. It's called Canyon de Chelly, and it's where the Navajo, but I'm going to refer to them in this conversation as the Dene. The Dene, the Spanish and imperialists, were the ones who gave them the name the Navajo. So the Dene were the community, the indigenous people who they had occupied Canyon de Chelly, which is like this spectacular thing, Grand Canyon, like, miles high, beautiful canyons. And in the middle, there was this beautiful river and stream. And they knew how to grow. They had thriving agriculture there that was supporting generation after generation after generation. And when the Yankees came and they pushed the Dene out of Canyon de Chelly on part of the long walk of tears, now the canyon is back under control of the Dene. And I said in the most ignorant way possible to this Dene leader, I'm like, "Oh, great, you have the canyon. Like, what are you guys gonna do?" And he looked at me, he said, "Nobody knows how to grow a sweet potato in there. Nobody knows how to like how to no one knows how to do the appropriate kind of apple irrigation system to grow the apple orchard." So I have these moments of like, oh, we can't possibly get back to our roots. But then I also have to say, but like, I know it's in us in an ancient way, and we just have to find the right conduits for it. And in some way, shape, or form, Arif, like, gosh, when I think about the Sahara and what's happening in the Sahara, there's a part of me that's like, "Oh my god, protect that. Protect those nuclear communities of people calling each other in to talk about the solar system or agriculture or whatever it might be." But I agree with Mina that I think we are, in some places of the world, it's too diluted and we all feel too tricked. We all feel too tricked. And even if I said to you, Mina, I mean, when we're doing local organizing for American politics, we know the local organizers, but only the left knows the local organizers. We're not crossing the boundaries.
We're not, and it's really scary because there are players and actors in local organizing that we hear about but we don't see, and we talk about but we don't talk to. And there's a physical and how do I there's a physical and a non-physical boundary between all sides, right? Between both sides. And things happen without us knowing about them until they happen. Even within organizing groups, there are rifts and conflicts that are coming up that are based on very deep philosophical differences that I think are coming up stronger and stronger than they ever had in the past. But also, Jenna and Saji and Arif, and I don't know if you all have been noticing this too. There's also a sense of unity coming out. There are people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and people who have taken very, very strict, strong standings and opinions and ideas about certain things that have started changing and are taking ownership of that change and are opening their eyes. And that only happened through dialogue and conversation. And Saji, you're probably the best person to talk about this, but your organization, Search for Common Ground, has started doing this in the US, is hosting dialogues with people from different sides and different opinions and different ideologies about how the world should be run. And I think that change is slowly starting to happen and starting to shape. And we need to keep doing that, and we need to keep having those conversations. And so I think when I see political commentators or leaders start taking ownership of their faults or flaws and start changing their opinions and ideas based on dialogues like this, I think that's the most powerful thing that we can do as leaders in our communities.
Well, I want to hear Saji's response, but Mina, we can just do that here on Twitch. Like, it is open. We can just start doing it. You know, that becomes the thing
I
that
love
I get so, I'm like, oh my God, there's no way we're ever going to be able to build the agriculture in Kenya and Dashe again. You know, like, but you're right. Like, we can just do those things here and let's put it on the books for 2 weeks from now.
I love that.
If I may jump in to the conversation, there are a couple of things that I'm hearing. One is when you compare the histories and compare that with today, one thing that is not in the past that is available today is technology that it's able to give people access to information, whatever the information might be, at much faster speeds, at much faster rates than in the past. So access to information is much more readily available today. Whether it's negative or positive, that's a different thing. The access itself is available to a great extent and increasingly. Second, what I'm also hearing is it's a generational issue that younger generations are seeing the world differently than the older generations are and are willing to take greater risks to fight for things that they believe in than the older generations are. So it's a question about culture, question about tradition, question about systems is primarily coming from a generation that is willing to take chances. So there's something there that is magical. Third, I think is what you're talking about is more and more we are hearing a little bit more honest in the discussion in a polarized world. That at least people are willing to take a risk and say, I made a mistake. And I think it's heroic and heroic to do that in a world where perfection is the norm. I think that's the beginning point of humility. That's the beginning point of thinking about how do we go beyond the trust issue. Because ultimately, the magic words when I'm hearing you also say is from Arif to Mina is people don't trust each other. People don't trust institutions. Part of it is still we are people. And if that's the case, where do we start? And this idea comes to.
Mina, are you there? Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
And Arif. Arif, where are you calling in from?
I cannot disclose that.
Oh, is it New York City?
I'm
Because
just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I got you. I got you. I got you for a second.
you really did. I was like, well, this is going to be kind of sexy. Where? Where are you
I'm
calling?
actually now in Algeria.
Oh, okay. Well, Saji.
We just got back from Johannesburg, so we are still.
Well, Saji and Yaya, who are in New York City, the capital of the world, are having the biggest Wi-Fi issues. So I apologize for that. Saji, it looks like you're back. Did you want to continue your thought? It started to glitch. Uh-oh. Saji, you there? So
I think Gina needs
So
to
this
choose.
whole
It's
trust.
either the voice or the image.
Yeah, maybe. Well, Saji likes to be the arm candy, so we'll let him keep his image up. So Mina and Arif, I appreciate the top down and bottom up structure. So having been in the foreign policy space for all of my career, I get it. I love that. But it feels like it's not top down and bottom up anymore. It feels like it's like ideas versus action almost. Like Mina, I don't know if you and I are ever going to see a different and Arif, you pointed to this a bit with like new language and like being sensitive around language. Um, but like, what does trust actually mean? How trust is a generational thing that I don't know if we ever rebuild. I mean, I've had my trust broken amongst family and friends that I was like, oh, they are my ride or die for my whole entire life. I never even have to question it, not even for a second. And over the past year or 2 years, because of the world, because of national and foreign policy, that's been completely flipped on its head. And I'm like, how, if I can't trust these people who like birthed me, how am I possibly going to ever like trust a stranger to teach my kid about what it means to be a decent human being? And so to me, I'm like, I don't know if like the top down of like trusting the system again is the dichotomy. It feels like there's the people who know what the hell they're doing, right? Like the agricultural farmers or the people who understand how to talk to 6-year-olds or the people who have really great ideas around getting policy shifted. And then there's like this other class of to me, it's like the cloud floating over everybody's head, which is around stories and the relationships that we have with ourselves and the relationships that we have with each other. And that's what's most intimidating to me, is because what I do see happening with the Tucker Carlson or the Candace Owens, or I will very intentionally mention Charlie Kirk here, is that they take stories, in my opinion, and um, use their interpretation sometimes in their own for their own self-interest, backed into the old system, capitalism, power, control, the domination system. Whereas if instead of us waiting for the system to adjust, getting citizens united out of government, isn't it you guys, everybody like everybody's insecure. Nobody entirely trusts themselves because trust is a fluid thing and subjective anyway. Do I trust Saji taking care of my children? Yes. Do I trust Saji to make a delicious Thanksgiving dinner? I have no idea. So like that word trust isn't applicable across those ranges anyway. That the biggest challenge that we have in life is to find a way to love ourselves enough so that we can love the other. And that doesn't feel systemic. That doesn't like if I'll give you another really quick example, if you don't mind, just because I'm both obsessed with systems and this idea of love. A family friend, but also like a relative of mine, was one of the helicopter pilots during the Los Angeles fires. His background is in military. He flew Black Hawks, and he is one of the country's greatest helicopter firefighting pilots. So they goes and gets the water, takes it, and he is a beast. There's all these articles written about him. There's going to be like a movie, a very dramatic blockbuster style movie about him. And he was explaining to me the difference between firefighters who work for the state of California and the firefighters who work for the private companies that California also hires. So in California, there's two different people who fight the fires. There's the state-funded folks, and then there's the private folks. And he would say, and he called them drops, so I'll call them drops, that he could do 12 to 20 drops, I'm assuming he meant water drops, an hour. And he worked for the state. So the same lake, the same helicopter, the same fire 10 miles away. He could do 10 to 12 drops an hour where as a state employee, whereas the private pilot in the same helicopter would only do 2 or 3. I said, why? He said, one, because the private company doesn't want to jeopardize their equipment that much, right? Like I am like gunning the helicopter, the machine. I'm doing everything I can. This helicopter is going to need to be buried in 2 years from now. I'm working it so hard. Private company doesn't want their equipment to be jeopardized like that. And then I said, okay, but aren't both you the same pilots trying to take care of the same exact thing? And he says, no, I'm being paid by the California taxpayer. And it feels like it's my job to protect their lives and their property and the long-term damage of the state. Whereas that same pilot from the private company, also a military graduate, right? So they both took that like same comparable Hippocratic oath to the common good. He's like, I don't know if it's that I care more about putting the fire out than these guys, but they are not incentivized to hustle as hard as I am. And it struck me that like, is that a trust thing? Or is that we've lost the faith that like humans will show up for humans in the right way? And when I think about Arif's story about what he was seeing in the Sahara, we saw each other's talents and commitments to the greater good in ways that Mina doesn't in her bedroom and I don't in my bedroom. I don't know what my neighbors are doing right now. I have no idea what my neighbors are doing right now. And so there feels like this, like, do we have to have this ideology shift so that all the pilots flying all the helicopters are trying to do what they can for the same fire at the same hustle rate? Like, that's not systemic. That's something here, I think. And that's something that folks in the Sahara, based on what I'm hearing Arif say, also know. They also still embody. It hasn't been imperialized out of them. My God, that's my long-winded diatribe. I don't know where I'm going with that.
Jenna, if I can jump in, add to this.
Please.
uh, by the way, I can also still cook a mean meal if it's
Thanksgiving
spicy
Day.
for you.
I'll be the judge of that.
Okay. But so there's a couple of thoughts. One, I think, is this idea that people don't trust each other. The question is, do they trust themselves
Right.
first? Right. This one is that do they trust themselves, and that more and more evidence is showing that they don't trust themselves. So they're relying on other people and other tools to help them make a decision. In a world that younger generations growing up technology wise, if you can't Google something, then the question is, does it actually exist? So the ability to dream and imagine of the possibilities of answers are less as we come into the future, because you can't discover it. Back in the day, we were able to discover things by hacking, looking through. How many card catalogs did we have to go through to find a magazine or a journal article? But now, if you don't look for that, if you don't quickly find it, it doesn't exist in some people's mind. So the question is people's trust in ourselves. And when you think about a human, we have multiple systems existing within ourselves. talking about systems outside, I'm inspired by Mina's challenge of, simple and local. But I'm going to put that into our own system. As a human being, we have multiple systems we negotiate and navigate, but we are not actually channeling those systems in a way to cohesively work together within our own bodies. Our emotional, intellectual, sexual, and reproductive and mental health issue systems are not actually working together in sync. And that is why we can't trust our own self, because we are not enabling it. It's our egos, our sense of fear and anger and jealousy and pride are getting in the way of this. So when we think about hacking external systems, I rather focus on how do we hack our own systems,
Mm.
realign and rebalance. Because if we do that well, all the other things fall into place. Otherwise, it's the grass is green on the other side, and we are focusing on something else without recognizing our internal power that we already have that we need to balance. Otherwise, all these other things, it's a risk. But the chaos we see outside is a result of what's the chaos inside ourselves.
Arif and Saji, do you think that that is but do you think that's applicable globally? Arif, you were pretty clear that that social cohesion looks different. But Saji, I mean, do you think that's a global human
Uh,
thing? I personally do,
last
but
last time I checked, humans are universally have some certain basic vital signs. It doesn't matter what blood type, how much money you have in your wallet or how in your bank. Doesn't matter what tribe, religion, ethnicity, what your beliefs are. Your bodies don't care about any of those because all of those are temporary. Those are all temporary things. They have a rise and a fall in life, right? Their birth and they die. What is unique to us as humans is that there are certain vital signs that make us a healthy body, like our blood pressure, our weight, and all those things. Doctors created those five vital signs based on thousands of years of Ayurvedic wisdom, right? So if you go to a doctor with a headache versus a knee pain, they first take your vital signs, which inform this. Last time I checked, no matter whether it's in the Sahara or DC or New York or Kabul, humans they have vital signs then. What would the vital signs for healthy society look like? There are certain vital signs there too. So I think if we think about it that way and not get into this thing, oh, your tribe is different, my blood type is different, we're creating more divisions that make us more powerful and unique when ultimately we all suffer. We all have commonalities. And I think that's where we need to focus on and really bring that out as opposed to make us so unique and different. And the same thing goes to this other word that earlier we used, it's the issue of freedom. Freedom without responsibilities or rights and versus responsibilities negates that. So I think we need to go back to the basics. And I'm going back to the basics because we were challenged by Mina to go back to the basics. So I'm going to the very, very metaphysical basics of who we are. Arif and Mina, I'm
Ab-
here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
sure, Sergi. Well, it's true. I have actually. I thought since we do have the private chat, I thought we are sharing our chats also in the public chat. Anyway, so I have wrote something that says the following. So we can't keep doing the same practices and expect different results, right? Still, our difference is what make us stronger. But I do believe that now we are replicating the same practices but different sizes XL, M, double XL, etc. etc. No. So prices before, so you do have small delegations. Now we try to mobilize all the delegations about that topic. Yet, what is the expected outcome? How we can measure the impact? How we can measure are we effective at this or not? And speaking about trust is actually it's all about having good governance. And as you have gave us the example of the vital sense of a human body. So even for instance, within a family, if you are living in a family where you can see the way of or the relation between the parents and the kids is abnormal, or they differentiate their relationship, whether the mother or the father with the kids, you start questioning that, and you start getting into more of, let's say, oh yeah, he is being or she is being depressive. No, it's about how is the atmosphere. And here when I'm speaking about trust, having worked as a governor representative in a particular field, so I do come from I have actually sailed in the two sides, whether when it comes to the administration and at state level, or even when it comes to the political advocacy. So when I spoke earlier about decentralization, you do have also what we call is we do have the decentralization and also the deconcentration of services, or some institutes or some um, jurisdictions. So here, when we speak, I'm going to speak about North Africa mainly. So you can find that even now, up to now, there are some businessmen who actually runs their businesses across different states through their representatives. But how they are doing that? And they didn't, and I'm sorry, they didn't visit their business for almost 2 or 3 or 5 years. How their businesses are surviving? Why? Because there is a strong trust between the owner and their representative. And it is similar how the society actually is or needs to work. We do have this kind of notions: decentralization, deconcentration, election democracy, and so on and so on and so on. But are we effective at this? And now my real issue when it comes to the I'm not going to say it's a critical or conflict stage, but still we do have a problem with the meaningful representation. So even if you have the best systems, but still, are we having the good representatives? When, for instance, Jenna earlier, she was saying to Mina, "Oh, you can be not politically correct." Yes, you can be, but it depends. Different. Everyone do have his or her own way of or style. For instance, for us, honestly, I myself, I think this is for the first time I'm saying I can't wait for my mandate as the youth ambassador to end, because it comes with a huge responsibility. Why? It's similar to your cousin Gina, the fireman. Like, we do have so many issues that we need to echo it. We do have the solutions, but still, some people are not listening out of arrogance, out of Mr. Knows It All or Miss Knows It All, and this kind of bureaucratic practices. Uh, well, since I have worked at the state level, we are used to bureaucracy, right? But now I have developed a new term working with international organizations is emailocracy. Now we are having emailocracy. You send emails, lot of emails, reminders, and so on. It's no different from writing letters and too much letters. Like, is that you do have pile of paperwork, and in the new era or way of working, you do have pile of piles and piles of emails. But still, are we effective? But I believe, and my way of working is that the moment I translate the trouble sound of the youth into more cohesive and peaceful manner to responsibles, by that I mean I'm done. I have fulfilled my mission. I have fulfilled my task, because I do have this kind of very active conscious that I have something to return back to the youth. Very soon I will age out from the youth category. I'm 32 years old by now, and I try to do my best so that the remaining 3 years, at least, we leave a very positive fingerprint for those who will come be behind us. Yes. Yeah. So back to you. This is a very interesting discussion. Tina, no
Yeah.
more questions, please. No more questions.
Mina,
I do.
no,
I
I
was
was
just
going to
gonna.
ask Mina to come in.
Yeah, no, I want to hear from Mina straight away. Arif, are you? It sounds like you're surrounded by kids, and it's such a lovely backdrop. Mina, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. I mean, I heard like three big things right there, right? Saji talking about ego and the individual, like your individual responsibility, and you, Jenna, talking about how this ethical like promise to serve the people plays a role. And or if you're talking here about planting the seeds for the next generation, and I think you all made really awesome points. So Jenna, my brother's a firefighter. He works for the state of, or sorry, he works for DC, so the government of DC, and he works in one of the worst neighborhoods in DC. And every day he tells us stories of the most horrific things you could think of children being hurt by elders and, you know, drugs playing a role in a lot of the local deaths, gun violence being really difficult. And I'm seeing my younger brother, my 25-year-old younger brother, going through this individual spiritual revolution within himself, realizing how he can process one the vicarious trauma he's seeing in these emergency response calls. Two, seeing how he can balance his emotional regulation with serving people in emergency situations. And then three, bringing himself back to faith, his faith in God, his faith in family, and his faith in service. And so, Saji, that comes back to your point on how us building that emotional resilience, us being self reflective, us building trust and faith within ourselves to serve plays a really big role. And RF, to your point around meaningful representation, it's like full circle, right? Unless we as leaders are able to have that within ourselves in service positions, we can never expect other people to do the same. If I'm going to sit here on my high horse as an ambassador or a congressperson and I'm just going to do what I want to do because it serves me, and I'm going to take money from who I want to take because it serves me, then I have lost my North Star and I've lost my guiding star, and I can never expect anyone else to do better. But if I stand here as a humble servant and serve as an example, someone like Candace Owens being able to say, hey, I screwed up. I had a bad opinion and I'm changing it because I know what's right. Someone like a firefighter saying, hey, I don't know how to handle all of this stress. Help me. That stuff matters and community matters in this work. Saji, I very, very distinctly remember minute by minute, second by second, that trip we made in Kenya where it was me and you and some other African leaders, Afghan leaders, and all of us collectively had a moment of wake up, of ego death in that moment. Part of our ego died as we saw human suffering before our eyes in ways that we had never seen when we visited that slum settlement community. And you walked us through our emotions in that moment. And I think, Arif, to your point, having leaders and mentors like Saji who help you process things like this, help you become better leaders in the long run. And I just wish that, you know, a lot of the work I'm doing now is helping Asian Americans get out and run for office and vote and do all of this. But I wish part of the leadership training of running for office also came with it emotional regulation and self growth and mentorship at a very deep personal level, because this work requires that. And if we don't have that compassion for ourselves and the people we're working with, we can't expect society to have it. We can't expect kids who are numbed by television screens to have empathy for other kids who are being shot in the neighborhood next door. And it's painful, it sucks. Why is it that for some people, seeing a black or brown kid die and get shot is less important than seeing a white kid die and get shot? We all bleed the same. It really, really sucks to see that. One person like Charlie Kirk getting assassinated or murdered causes all this uproar when over 600,000 people in Gaza have died over the past 2 years. It really sucks, and it starts with having compassion for the people within our own families. And it all comes back to that Mother Teresa quote that I'm going to carry like a rallying cry for the rest of my life, that peace begins with a smile. So smile at your neighbors and open the door for another person, and go get food at the community kitchen in your neighborhood, because like that's where it starts. And we can't expect systems to serve us if we are not serving each other, right? Like I don't see it, like it makes no sense to me when people complain about broken systems when we're not taking care of each other. And every single faith has that as a guiding star, whether it's Jesus or it's Muhammad or it's Buddha. Every single faith leader, regardless of what you believe or pray to or follow, has service and love as the central North Star. And I think we all just need to come back to that. So RF's point of going back to traditional systems, maybe the biggest traditional system we need to go back to is compassion for ourselves and for others.
So if I can just go push you a little bit in this manner, I want to see, is which comes first? Is it the other or the individual, me, right? Am I trying to be of service to the other person and the community, or first do I need to serve myself, not from a place of selfish, but from a place of selflessness? That system is what I was talking about, that we need to hack first before we try to serve other systems. The root of that is us, that we need to have. What do you think?
That's a tough question. But like, yeah, you're right. Like, how can we expect a firefighter to go into a dire situation and help other people if they're over here trying to process what's actually happening? So we need to serve ourselves to be strong internally, to understand our role, because not everybody's going to be a frontline responder. Not everybody's going to be standing in front of a rally speaking, and not everybody's going to be sitting behind closed doors leading policy discussions. Everyone has their own unique role to play in systems of change. So until we serve ourselves and do the due diligence to figure out where we fit and figure out where our hearts truly lie, we can never be good servants and serve other people and help other people. I think it's interconnected.
Arif, what are your thoughts on that, Arif?
Saji, you know my way of thinking.
I'm
Yeah,
purposely saying.
my brother. My brother. If I don't have an interest in that, trust me, I'm not getting into it. If you cannot help yourself, you cannot help the others. As easy as that. It's true. I can open the door for you, but will I be opening my bank account for you, Saji? For sure not. You got me? But still, can I be useful to you? Yes. This is why even now you see this kind of Mina spoke about something that is very, very, very critical to us as youth, is now what we call the so-called youth leadership. We do have so many youth leaders. Most recently, when I was in Johannesburg, and we were having this kind of capacity building on the transitional justice, reconciliation, and peace building in Africa. Great. And then there was this kind of segment where we were speaking about institutional indicatives, etc., etc. And most of the participants, most of them, they are youth leaders from different nationalities. Great. And they were starting criticizing the government, their role, etc., etc. And then I took the floor. I done it in purpose. I was the very last person to speak. I told them, "Are you satisfied about the efficiency of your government representatives?" They said, "No." I was like, "Okay." Are you? I said, "Do you have youth leaders in your community?" They said, "Yes." Are you satisfied with them? They said, "Yes." Excellent. Do they represent you well? And here it was the trigger question. I'm not going to say all, but let's say 90%, they said no. I said, why? You do have great leaders. They should be great representatives. They said, no. We do have our differences, and they do not represent us well. And here it falls on the type of youth leadership we are speaking about. I confront a lot of youth, active youth, brilliant youth, but some of them, I'm not being judgmental, but some of them, they just take the floor, but at what cost? If you take the floor of that particular opportunity, at what cost? Others should have benefited from this opportunity way much better than you, with a greater impact than you. And here again, we are speaking about trust. And here again, where our role as the youth ambassador comes in. We bring a different lens, a new practice. Now we are speaking about the many approaches we have indulged it in the working methodology within the African Union youth peace security approach. Sometimes we take lot of things granted out of just thinking, oh yeah, we do have that a brilliant consultant. Yes, but did that brilliant consultant took into consideration the context specificity of that region, of that youth group? Most of them no. Even worse, I have most recently saw active youth in a very decisive discussions. They couldn't draft an adequate outcome without using ChatGPT. I was literally surprised. At the end of the workshop, one of the participants said, uh, sorry, can I use ChatGPT? I was like, what? Are we arriving to this level? That's why I'm telling you guys, I can't wait to finish my mandate. Honestly, as Gina was saying at the very beginning, I would love to see the governors running the world. I used to be governor representative, and I was doing an excellent job in my field, in especially in economic empowerment. And you feel that you are making a great impact when you help that industry runs their business, etc., etc., and they are recruiting new families like with hundreds, etc. You feel relieved. At least you took, let's say, 50 families out of poverty. But when it comes to policy, do we have a consensus on how policymakers should act, should behave? You spoke about the inner, let's say, health, Mina. You spoke about the inner health of individuals, especially those who are working at the state level or public sector, etc. Trust me, I have been through a lot of experiences where my mental health was the least of their worries and even my worries. Why? Because I was very focused that this problem needs to be solved. Because I know if I, as a responsible at the district level, if I'm not going to solve that problem, it will have the ripple effect on others. And I won't be having a contingency plan, or even I can be fired. Who knows? But luckily, I have done my best. Gina, do you have any other questions? Do you know what's the meaning of your name in Arabic, Gina?
I think so, but I would love to hear
Oh,
your interpretation.
it's paradise.
Yeah, I heard.
Back to you.
Trust me, there's nothing lovely about me. Arif, I really enjoyed some of your perspectives, or I enjoyed all of them. And like I said, I love hearing the kids in the background. I have this vision of them on a playground, um, making up games and running in circles and being wild. I have two children, and I love that noise. Um, Mina, in like the traditional Americanized woman who's used to like grabbing the bull by the horns and organizing and starting to do the thing and trying to figure out whatever it is. For me, we're Saji and I are gathering folks simply to hear what ideas people have. And Arif, we have a saying, just, when you're in the ideation stage of here in the States of throwing spaghetti against the wall. And I actually don't know if that's like a universal concept or not, but it is truly like the most horrific, messy phase of an ideation process where you are coming up with things and you're throwing it at the wall, spaghetti at the wall, pasta at the wall to see what actually sticks. Which sounds like it would make for disgusting pasta. And I don't know who came up with the analogy, but I still like the visual. And one of the things that we're thinking, because Arif, I personally daydream about living in a small community and teaching kids. My background is in education, and I have a real ability to connect with kids under the age of like 8, like even like 6, even under the age of 6. And I really, really enjoy being with them. And I really can tell I add value to their imagination and how they're asking questions about the world. And if I can do nothing else but teach them how to be curious, like it's the thing I love doing the most. And so when I think about like the examples that you were offering at the top of the call in the Sahara with folks, um, there being this complementary education system. And then hearing Mina say, like, well, we're not even serving our neighbors. We're not serving the same people in our communities. I'm like, okay, what if I was able to have and facilitate and host a complementary school class, something of that sort, for my community? And if it's unlikely, because I feel like there's a lot of old people who live around me, but like now I'm like, okay, I can use this platform and maybe I just host an hour a week on, something that I think is magical, that I think could spark kids' interest or something along those lines. But, you know, eh, Mina, and Arif, this is a real and very, very sincere invitation. I am personally going to spend the rest of my life trying to figure out what structures can be built that can last 100 years until somebody else comes along and says that thing is not needed anymore. My background is in foreign policy. I was at the United Nations for years. I bleed blue. Like I stand by the charter, I stand by the conventions, I stand by the declarations. And I don't think I don't think they're working. I don't think they're serving. I think they're helpful language, but no one's taking them seriously. Certainly not my country. But I do think they're a reflection of humanity. I think they are divine in their own right. And so I don't know if either of you want to continue to participate in these conversations and these ideas, but it is a sincere invitation that you can use this space, the land of Anne, for any public ideating you want to have or want to do. Arif, when you are done your job as a politician, um, I am going to push you even harder to say what parts of the AU and the EU and the UN need to be dismantled. What can we redesign, re-architect, rebuild? And I recognize that you have a different title that might not allow you to say this thing is crap and this thing is brilliant. Um, but that is sincerely what I I think we can do here. And I think now is the time, and it's no joke that we're doing it this week. Um, but I wanted to offer that to both of you and tell you how grateful I am that you're doing the work that you're doing where you're doing it, and that you're willing to come on and ideate, throw spaghetti at the wall.
Thank you, Jenna. It's been so awesome to be here. Conversations like this really like ignite my spirit. And you probably know better than anyone that local politics and politics in general just drains your spirit sometimes.
Mm.
So having conversations with people who have hearts that align like mine is really, really awesome. So thank you. And I will gladly accept that invitation. I think we need to have more conversations like this. They matter for the world. And I think the more conversations we have like this, the better our world is going to be. So thank you for creating a space like this.
Jenna, I cannot
Arif.
thank you. Ah, I cannot thank you enough. Honestly, I'm sorry for not having the cam. As I said, it's either the voice or the image.
Or
So
or
once
the
again,
or the face, right? Yes. Well, next time you'll show up with just your camera and you can theatrically
sure,
act out
sure,
how
I
we're
will do my
supposed to
best.
save the
I will
world.
do my best. My advice is that it actually comes from experience. Whenever I'm in online, etc., I all the time have this kind of technical issues, so I try to avoid the camera so that I'm very audible. So before I hand it over to you, my recommendation is that if you have not heard of the book, it's called Introduction for Ibn Khaldun. It speaks about history, it speaks about politics, society in the world, ups and downs, and there are a lot of lessons. When you will be reading this book, you will be speaking to both your mind and heart, and it will even help you to take very decisive actions when it comes whether to personal or professional life. So it's been an absolute pleasure being part of you, part of this discussion. And Twitch, I think this is for the very first time my name is appearing there. I hope it's not going to be the very last time. And thanks to Sergey for extending the invitation. We try to have this kind of strong because it falls also on our responsibility as youth advocate to have to push and to bring new breath and new thoughts to discussion to the floor so that we know how we can explore better alternatives to the current issues. Thank you so much. I yield back the floor. I yield back the floor to you in the UN style, Gina, to remind
Thank
you a bit.
you. I will take your time. I will gladly take all of your time.
Thank you so much.
All right. Arif, thank you very much. Mina, thank you. Jay, who has been facilitating all of the production on the back end from Brooklyn, is always doing just such a wonderful job of holding all of these voices together from all over the world. And with that, we will see you tomorrow with a similar conversation. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.